Can't she just stick with that? I mean, she thinks she know everything.
Let's talk everything.
It's everything. I'm everything.
Welcome back to the Emajae Talks Everything podcast, where I talk politics, I talk pop culture, and everything that there is in between. I am Emajae. This is proof of life. This is proof that I'm still here, okay? It has been quite some time, okay, since y'all have last heard from me, and for that, I do sincerely apologize, but your girl has been living her life, you know what I'm saying? Last time I shot the pod or put out a pod episode was in November. And by no means was I intending for that to be the last pod of the year. But when I tell y'all, December was a month, okay? Every single every single week in December was something. And I had a great time, had a great holiday. I'm very appreciative of my family, my friends, my community. It was just a very well needed break. But your girl's back, and happy New Year, okay? I just want to start by saying Happy New Year. And also, I thought about my first pod being back, talking about New Year and my New Year goals and kind of having a discussion around that. But the reality is, I'm not really one of those New Year, new people kind of gals, you know what I'm saying? I'm very much so New Year, better me, right? The theme of my year is building the foundation. I turned 30 this year, and so it's a pretty big deal to me. And I'm just thinking about the future. What does the future of my life look like? When you're in school, as long as I was in school for, the future is pretty much set, right? Like ABC, 1, 2, 3, this is what it looks like. Here's the map. All you have to do is put in the work, execute, and you're good to go. But now I'm in a part of my life where it's like, it's not that simple. And so I'm really looking forward to mapping out what the next 5 years look like and mapping out what it means to be Emajae in her 30-year-old, real grown woman bag. So that's what the new year means for me. I hope that whatever the new year means for you, that you stick with it and that you are encouraged by whatever brings you strength and motivation and that you see it through, right? So Happy New Year. I'm back. And okay, so there's an elephant in the room, right? So the elephant in the room is, if you're watching the pod as opposed to just listening, you'll notice that I'm in a different space, right? So normally I would be in my living room area on the couch, and I enjoy shooting the pod in that area, but I'm thinking about mixing it up obviously. I'm thinking about mixing it up and actually shooting the pod in my office because I just feel like it's a quicker setup. I want to get more pod episodes out this year. And this just feels like a more intimate setup, a quicker setup. So I'm still working with it. I'm still adjusting. I have a lot that I want to do, but I didn't want to wait to start back the podcast until, the environment was perfect. That's another thing for 2026. It's about consistency, not perfection, right? And perfection will come along with the consistency. So I hope that if you're watching and you're checking out the new setup and the new background, you just, episode by episode, you might see things moving and mixing around, but just know I'm working on it. The most important thing is that I'm back and I am ready to honestly just jump right on in with everything keeping me entertained. So, very first thing I have to talk about, Jill Scott just announced that her brand new album, In Over a Decade, To Whom This May Concern, is coming out February 13th. I am so excited about this album. primarily because to know me is to know I love me some Jill Scott, okay? I think that Jill Scott is, number one, she's probably my personal favorite artist. And that has to do with the fact that she is a storyteller. I think it's amazing how she embodies strength and sensuality and storytelling. And she has real, conversations in her music that pushes the ideals of what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a Black woman, what it is to love and to feel and the world around her. I just love Jill Scott's music. It just feels like home to me. And I'm so excited for this album. And she's been doing a series of interviews recently on her press tour as she promotes her album, and she was on the Angie Martinez show, and she actually said something that I was like, this is why me and Jill Scott connect so much, because obviously the name of the podcast is Emajae Talks Everything, because it's based on the premise that I am multifaceted. I'm not one thing. I love to talk about different things. I love to learn and discuss different things. I have different opinions. And so this small clip came out of it, and I was like, I literally have to play it for y'all.
I'm a lot of things. I'm not one thing. I don't ever recall being one thing. I think I'm sweet, but I also think I'm spicy. I think that I'm intelligent, but I could do dumb shit. You know what I mean?
So, it's just a quick little thing, right? Like, she's all things, I'm all things. We relate. That's my girl. So excited for that album. Moving on from Jill Scott's upcoming album, things keeping me entertained. This is one of the main things that I wanted to talk about today on the podcast, right? So I want to talk about a clip that went viral related to a show that I actually keep up with and watch called Married to Medicine. So Married to Medicine is a show that is on Bravo. Bravo is the network that houses, the Real Housewives franchises and things of that nature. And you really don't have to have a lot of context for the conversation that we're going to have today. But I wanted to bring up this conversation because I feel like a lot of people are getting it wrong, if I'm being completely honest. I think a lot of people are getting the conversation wrong. And so that's where I step in, Let me pull up the video. We're gonna watch it and I'm gonna comment. So just for context, the video is showing one of the doctors on the show. Her name is Dr. Simone. And Dr. Simone has two sons. One is named Michael, who is the youngest. I can't remember the oldest name, but it's irrelevant for the purposes of this video. So Michael is sitting Dr. Simone down with, his father, her husband, and basically having this conversation about how, number one, he needs a brand new car because his Jeep is he just over it. Like, there's really no issue. He just wants a new car because to him, the Jeep is played out, okay? Number two, he's coming to her and he is basically saying, I just got done with undergrad, now I'm ready to go to law school, and basically you're gonna pay for it, right? Dr. Simone is a doctor. She is married to a man who he says he's a real estate agent, but I ain't seen him sell a house in a few seasons. I'ma just put it like that. And so this scene is basically Michael, the youngest son, sitting down his parents, saying all of these things that he needs from them. And it sparked a conversation about privilege and entitlement. And so let's listen to the video, or watch the video if you're watching, and I'll give you my comments after.
Only one here at the table with an actual graduate doctorate degree is me. And how I did it was I got scholarship money and loans.
Your mom was not able to do the things for you that you are able to do for us. What about all the rich white kids, their parents pay for their way to do everything, and then they get out of college debt-free and are millionaires?
So what about all the white people who pay for their kids to go to school, be debt free, and they still ain't doing shit?
Now, Michael's point is still a valid one. We are blessed. We are in a situation where we can help.
Who here at the table gives a about how hard I'm working instead of being able to move towards retirement?
Me.
He said that he thinks every day about what he can do to be able to give back to you.
Think that ain't doing enough.
But then don't.
If I'm dead before he finishes law school,
That
then
can
what?
happen because God might take you away.
I'm done talking about this.
Oh, I don't care.
So you get the point. Okay. So there's a few things that I want to say about this conversation that I feel like has been missing on social media discussions regarding it. Number one, Michael's not his number one issue, but his first issue here is, as you heard in the clip, he compares himself as a privileged black kid to privileged white kids. You are not a white kid, okay? It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much privilege you have. You are still black, right? So first things first, let's not compare ourselves with other races because there are so many different things at play that you're already starting off just in a off-based argument when you start there. Not to mention what happens in your house is your house. Let's not compare, how other people are raised. But the main thing here in this conversation is I think people are missing that there's a spectrum when it comes to how one is able to provide for their children. And there's a lot of nuance to it, but I think it comes down to 3 different categories. Oftentimes it's either struggle, privilege, or entitlement.
Hey, Future Maj here. I just wanted to make sure that I emphasize that there's a lot of nuance to this conversation, okay? I created this quick little breakdown for the sake of this conversation, but obviously there's overlap within this spectrum and there's a lot of nuance. There are a lot of gray areas in between. So just want to emphasize that this is a bigger conversation with a lot more nuance, and this is just for the sake of this conversation. Toodles.
Okay. As someone who is working very, very, very hard so that her kids can have generational wealth and access to resources that I didn't have access to, I think of this conversation quite a bit because a lot of people like Dr. Simone, maybe they're first generational X, Y, and Z, right? Maybe they're the first people in their family to have access to certain things. And so they want to give their children as many opportunities and as many resources as possible, which is obvious and evident that Dr. Simone has done for her son, Michael, or else he wouldn't be talking about how he just needs a Tesla because his Jeep is just played out, right? So it's obvious that she's given and given and given to this 22-year-old young man quite a bit, which is great. That's what a lot of parents want to do for their kids. The problem though is it hinges between raising privileged kids and raising entitled kids. And Michael, in my opinion, is very entitled. The conversation that I was seeing online though was, why should he struggle? If she has money, if his parents have access to ABC 1, 2, 3, why shouldn't he feel like he can go to his parents and ask for those things? That is half of the picture though, right? Of course, he should be able to go to his parents and say, I need this, or Mom and Dad, can you help support me over here? But when you are going to your parents and you're 22 years old and you have no bills, you have no financial responsibility, part of the conversation that is missing from that clip is she gets on to him because she's like, you spent $60,000 on my credit card in 1 month. You don't have a job, okay? You're not working for this money. You don't have any sense any sense about the value of $1. And I don't care how much money you have, how much resources or access you have. I personally believe that those are fundamental lessons and understandings that you should have, period. Okay? As many opportunities and resources and generational wealth that I hope to pass on to my children one day, that I will pass on to my children one day, you better believe that those children will understand work ethic, that those children will understand the value of a dollar. You know, if the conversation had been set up as, listen, Mom, I'm wanting to go to law school and I'm looking for you to financially support me still, okay? I know I don't work, but I'm probably not gonna be able to work while in law school. However, you know, what can I do to kind of help mitigate the financial situation? Or I would like a new car, but you know what? I'm gonna prioritize asking you about law school instead of asking for a new car. Or here's the plan, Mom, that I've come up with of how I can support, or how I can pay you back, or how I can do this, or how I can do that. That skill set of planning, of understanding how finances work and how to maneuver finances and the value of someone else's finances that they're paying for you, all of those things are fundamental to making sure that you give resources to your child and understand that yes, you are raising a child who is financially privileged, but also guarding against the entitlement that comes along with it. And I just want to release people from the shackles of thinking that it's one or the other. It's either your kids struggle or your kids are gonna be just super spoiled, super entitled. The happy medium is, in my opinion, giving those resources, giving those opportunities that you work, you know, your ass off for, of course. But if you are not simultaneously giving responsibility and teaching work ethic and teaching the value of a dollar to those kids at the same time, you will raise entitled kids. You absolutely will. You know, and I think that's important to say. I also think it's important to say that I don't think things should exist on the opposite end. Had he gone to his parents and they have all these, you know, resources and all this money, and they're just like, no, I struggled, so you struggled. I went through this, so you have to go through this. I don't think that that's the route to go either, right? In my opinion, it should be about each generation doing better than the next. You know, picking up the baton, running your race, doing what you can, and passing the baton to the next generation with the knowledge, the resources, and support that you do have. You know, I think, again, it's about the happy medium. They don't have to struggle just because you struggled, but you don't want to raise an entitled human, an entitled individual, the in-between. And that was, in my opinion, what was missing from this entire conversation. But I'm glad that I got that off my chest, because Married to Medicine is that show, and the fans were up in arms about this conversation, and to me it felt way more simple than I feel like people were giving it credit for. So now that that's out the way, Married to Medicine is one of the shows that has been keeping me entertained, but I'm looking to y'all for recommendations for movies and shows, because I have been very bored. Okay, I have been extremely bored with the lack of good television, and I don't know if I'm missing something. I don't know what's happening. I finally watched part 2 of The Wiz. I'm gonna be honest, I was underwhelmed. I'm just gonna be honest. And I saw The Wiz, I'm not The Wiz, girl. Child, not The Wiz, Wicked. I saw Wicked Part 2 and I was underwhelmed. I actually saw it last year on Broadway, loved it. I thought the second half of the play was the best, but I don't think it fully translated, you know, to film. I'm not sure. What else? I watched Dave Chappelle's comedy special, and I'm just gonna move right along from that. And so, yeah, I need more recommendations of movies and shows. I'm finding that I'm like rewatching old shows that, you know, I've enjoyed in the past, but I need something new and fresh. So if you have any recommendations, make sure you let me know so that I can talk about them, give you my opinions, and review them. But let's move on, because there's more to talk about. Shifting now to everything that is in the news. So I want to talk about the 83rd Golden Globe Awards that occurred this past Sunday. Mind you, like, do they promote these award shows? Because I promise you, I just looked up and it was another award show. I was so confused. But I wanted to talk about the Golden Globes for a few reasons. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Golden Globes, you can basically think of it like one step down from the Oscars. It's a very, very prestigious award that you can, or award ceremony, but it's not quite the Oscars, right? Like, it's right there, but not quite. Just to give you some context and some background. What I wanted to talk about, though, was kind of the setup between Sinners being nominated for awards and this other movie called One Battle After Another. Now, I'd heard about One Battle After Another when it first came out, didn't care enough to go watch it, see it, or anything like that. I saw that Teyana Taylor was in the movie, Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, so Regina Hall, very, very huge names, but I just really never got around to watching it. So I'm watching the Golden Globes, or let me be honest, I'm watching the recaps of the Golden Globes because I'm not sitting through that boring award show. But I'm watching the recaps of the Golden Globes and I'm seeing that One Battle After Another is winning in major categories that Sinners is also qualified in. Now, I went to the theaters to see Sinners twice, okay? It was that good and is that good. In my opinion, Sinners is the best movie that came out in 2025. I believe it deserves all of the awards, all of the accolades. However, that's not exactly what was happening. So it comes to find out that Best Director at the Golden Globes went to Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another. He won that award over Ryan Coogler for Sinners. And also Best Screenplay in a Motion Picture also went to Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another over, again, Ryan Coogler for Sinners. So I'm thinking, what is this One Battle After Another? Because like I just said, Sinners is the best movie to come out of 2025. Now, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all, as I do. I have not seen One Battle After Another, so to be fair, it is very possible it could be better than Sinners. But I doubt it, okay? Strongly doubt it. Strongly doubt it. Particularly because I have heard the premise of the movie, I have seen clips of the movie, and I'm just not seeing how it's better. With that being said, I am gonna watch it and follow up because I think I have to do my journalistic duty, okay, and actually give it a full, fair watch. But I'm telling y'all right now, it's probably not better than Sinners, okay? I'm just gonna be honest. So my issue is, number one, why is Sinners losing, right? But let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this conversation, which is the conversation that has come up around Teyana Taylor. Teyana Taylor won Best Performance by a Female Actor in a Supporting Role in Any Motion Picture, okay? She looked beautiful, by the way, at the Golden Globe. She gave a beautiful speech, so I just want to start with that premise. I also want to give a disclaimer that I am familiar with Teyana Taylor from like over a decade ago. Do y'all remember back in the day that show, My Super Sweet 16? Okay. So that's when I met Teyana Taylor, because in my opinion, she had one of the coolest Super Sweet 16s on the show. And over the years, I have followed her as she's a creator, she's a musical director, she's an artist. And here recently, or seemingly here recently, she is now an actress. Now, I haven't followed her acting career, haven't really watched any movies with her acting, but, oh man, y'all see that happening in real time? I haven't, watched any movies with Teyana Taylor in it or anything like that. but I'm rooting for her, right? I'm rooting for everybody black.
I'm rooting for everybody black.
Shout out to Issa Rae. So I was rooting for her because she's a black woman in Hollywood, right? So why not? The issue that has been coming up though is whether or not Teyana Taylor deserved her Golden Globe Award for her role in One Battle After Another. And a lot of people say that the movie wasn't that good. A lot of people have said that Teyana Taylor's acting was not that good. And I will follow up on that once I watch the movie. But I do want to say that in my opinion, the conversation really should be bigger than whether or not Teyana Taylor deserved the award, right? Like that is only this big of the entire conversation. Because the reality is, let's say Teyana Taylor was mediocre in One Battle After Another. Let's just hypothetically speaking say that she was mediocre. Is she the first actress to win a major award after a mediocre performance? Yeah, probably not. Probably not. There are plenty of people who have mediocre performances who win these awards. Plenty, okay? Plenty, right? And also, like, black women deserve to be mediocre. I'm just gonna, we're often not, okay? We're often not, but black women deserve to be mediocre and get away with it just like everybody else. So hypothetically speaking, even if Teyana Taylor's role in One Battle After Another was mediocre, honestly, who cares? I do not. The conversation I want to have though is more systemic, right? The conversation really to me is, why does Hollywood continuously reward roles that perpetuate stereotypical narratives about black women, black people, black communities, minority communities? That to me is the conversation, okay? There have been how many black women who have won this role, right? If I'm not mistaken, Halle Berry, let's do the math, i.e. let's pull up the receipts. Golden Globes, Halle Berry. Let's see. Or let's put in how many black women have won Best Actress Golden Globes. Let's see. Now this is according to whatever immediately came up on Google, y'all, okay. It says, as of early 2026, a small but significant number of black women have won Golden Globes for Best Actress, with notable winners including Whoopi Goldberg, who was the first winner in '86 in The Color Purple. The Color Purple. Halle Berry, Angela Bassett, and more recently, Andra Day. Okay, so Halle Berry won for Best Actress in Introducing Dorothy Dandridge. That was in 2000. Angela Bassett and What's Love Got to Do with It. So there have been some, I remember when Andra Day won for the US v. Billie Holiday. So there have been a handful of black women who have won in this category. But once again, we go back to the fundamental issue, which is, a lot of the times when you see black women or black people win these awards, it's for roles that were quite literally perpetuating one view or perspective of what it means to be black women or to be black. And that to me is more of the issue. Now, what people are saying about Teyana Taylor's role in One Battle After Another is that she was a super hypersexual woman, that was pretty much the role, was to just portray a hypersexual black woman. And again, it's hard for me to say without having the context of the movie. Also, people tend to hypersexualize black women without us doing anything. So I do need to watch to really give y'all a full sense, but I will pull up what Teyana Taylor said in a recent interview that she did with not the New York Times, child, with Vanity Fair. And I'm gonna read it to y'all so y'all get a sense of where she's coming from and her thoughts. So the article says, since its release, much has been written about the politics of one battle after another and what, if anything, the film is trying to say with the fetishization of Perfidia Beverly Hills, which is Teyana Taylor's character in the movie. It said, she's become a fixation for Penn's Colonel Stephen Lockjaw, who is a corrupt, ultra-conservative white man in power who presents as basically a white nationalist, but in private, he has an obsession with black women. Weird energy, weird movie energy right now. It says, what to make of her hypersexualized role in the racial dynamics at play? Taylor tiptoes around the topic a bit, careful to not overgeneralize. She says, I think we don't enjoy seeing the harsh reality, but this is what's happening. Is it? I mean, okay. It goes on to say that she was saying in the interview, she said, another person interviewed me and mentioned something about Perfidia and how people felt like she was overly horny. And I'm like, do you realize the first thing we see of Perfidia is her having a gun to a guy's head and he calls her sweet thing? She says with a bit of frustration. She says, are you watching the same film? Taylor seems to see her one battle after another character as using her sexuality to her advantage rather than getting taken advantage of. Penn's Lockjaw ultimately falls into her ploy, finding himself submissive to her sexuality. Perfidia kind of dived into the, oh, you think I'm hot? All right, bet. Cool, if I get to still do what I'm doing, all I gotta do is show you a little titty or something. What y'all think? Am I tripping? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. But it does feel weird that she won that award for a role where she basically is a sexual strategy to this white nationalist conservative man. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. But what I will say is Hollywood has a history of rewarding roles that perpetuate certain narratives and perspectives of black women. And I think that's bigger than whether or not Teyana Taylor is a good actress or whether or not she, had the acting chops for it. Because how many mediocre white women, white men, other people get rewarded for roles that they sucked in? Quite a few. And to prove my point even more, and just to kind of close out this part of the pod, I do want to mention and shout out Wunmi Mosaku, who played Annie from Sinners. Wunmi Mosaku, she was not even nominated in this category for Best Supporting Actress in a Motion Picture, and she should have been, okay? If you watch Sinners, you understand how important of a role Annie played in that movie. Annie was basically the reason why the characters in that movie survived. She knew the spiritual and cultural generational stories and methods to protecting her family and her friends against the vampires or whatever the bad people in Sinners were. Sorry, it's been a while. But Annie is a black woman. She's a dark-skinned, chocolate, plus-size, 4C black woman who was essentially the unsung hero of Sinners. And she did an amazing, beautiful job in that movie, and she wasn't even nominated. We have to think about that. And we have to go to my favorite question that I love asking on this podcast. Why? Why was she not good enough? Her acting chops were elite. Her storyline was elite. That movie, production, everything elite, and she wasn't even nominated. But Teyana Taylor is going to win an award because she played the black woman to this ultra white, conservative, white nationalist white man. we have to start asking ourselves why. Why are certain people getting rewarded? Because most of this is politics. Most of these awards is politics, right? It very rarely even comes down to who had the better movie or who, played the better part. Very rarely. So what is the politics behind why Teyana Taylor won this award? What is the politics behind why one battle after another continuously won these awards over sinners? That's the question that we need to be asking. We need to be looking at the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture has nothing to do with Teyana Taylor as an individual actress. That's it on that. I'm gonna watch it. I'm not expecting much, I'm gonna be honest, but I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna do my due diligence, okay? Let's move on and get into a little bit more serious of, not a little bit more serious, way more serious of a topic. Of course, it's been a while since I last shot the podcast, and I wanted to come back and, talk about what's been happening politically speaking. But of course, as you know, every day in this current administration feels like a month. So for me to truly catch us all up on everything that's been happening would take probably a 5-hour-long podcast in and of itself. And we're not gonna do that because I know that you guys don't wanna listen to a 5-hour podcast in and of itself about Trump and the Trump administration. But I have to absolutely talk about what has been going on in Minnesota. So for those of you who might not know, I'm actually going to read the article because when it comes to things like this, it's very important that I get the information 100% correct. At a high level, a 37-year-old woman was just shot and killed by ICE agents in Minnesota. And that's at a very high level. But I want to quickly skim through this article from CNN. Why did I say it like that? That's wild. This CNN article, it's titled, "What We Know About the Fatal ICE Shooting in Minneapolis." It has been updated as recent as yesterday. And I just kind of want to walk through and give my high-level opinions of what's going on. So the article says that thousands of people across the country mobilized over the past weekend to protest the killing of U.S. citizen in Minneapolis and to call for the end of the Trump administration's mass deportation campaign. There were, protests in Texas, New York, DC, Seattle, all across the country. It says local and federal officials are still sharply divided over what actually happened in the minutes leading up to the Minneapolis shooting of Renee Nicole Macklin Good, 37, who on Wednesday, President Trump and other federal officials have asserted that the agent who killed Ms. Good as she was driving from the scene acted in, quote, self-defense. Minnesota officials have described those accounts as propaganda and garbage. So what we're seeing here right now is a divide between federal, recounts of what happened and actual state accounts of what has happened. We have the federal government saying this was quote unquote self-defense, and we have Minnesota officials saying that this is nothing but propaganda and garbage, saying that this was an act done in self-defense, right? So it says a New York Times analysis of videos of the shooting contradicts Trump's administration's account. Another video taken by the immigration agent who actually killed Ms. Good moments later was released on Friday and provides further details about the course of events. So let's see. It says what happened in the encounter. Here is what we know. It says in videos posted on social media and verified by the Times, a maroon Honda Pilot was shown partly blocking a lane of a snowy residence street. It says that the driver, later identified as Ms. Good, advances the vehicle slightly, stops, and waves to other drivers. A truck with flashing lights approaches and the driver waves once again. When the truck stops, federal agents emerge. 2 agents approach Ms. Good and tell her to get out of the car. One tries to open the driver's side door, reaches through the window. A third agent, identified as Jonathan Ross, steps in front of the Honda. The vehicle then moves ahead. Mr. Ross pulls out a gun and fires at the driver, continuing to shoot as the vehicle moves past him. Okay. Mind you, at no point have we heard anything about her citizenship, not anything related to what ICE is allegedly supposed to be doing, right? Okay. It says the Honda accelerates and then crashes. Mr. Ross approaches the vehicle, then walks away and tells others to call 911. They say one witness who spoke with the Times described seeing an agent trying to rip open the Honda's door while hearing another agent in front of the vehicle shout, "Stop," before quickly firing. A video taken by Mr. Ross was made public on Friday, showing the moments before the shooting. So then the article goes on to say, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad," Miss Good said to Mr. Ross as he recorded her on his phone and circled her car, which was blocking part of the road. As he continued to record, Miss Good's wife, Becca, prodded him. "You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead." Miss Good began driving. As the agent reached the front of the car, the camera suddenly pointed towards the sky and gunshots rang out. Now, that sounds hella convenient, right? The camera suddenly pointed towards the sky and gunshots rang out. It goes into who the victim is a little bit more. How have officials responded? So again, officials have clashed over the details of the killing, with local officials describing it as avoidable and federal officials defending the use of force. In a post on social media, Mr. Trump said he believed the agent had shot the driver in self-defense and falsely claimed Miss Good, quote, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the officer. Now, mind you, these are all verifiably false details, right? Like, there was a video and accounts, and people have verified that that is not accurate. Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, said that the woman was, quote, stalking officers and had committed domestic terrorism. Okay. You got to make that make sense in my head. You have to make that make sense in my head. You have to make that make sense in my head. Even if she was attempting to run over one of the ICE agents, which has been disproven, you have to make it make sense in my head how that equates to domestic terrorism. And we need to be clear about what we are considering domestic terrorism, because there's a lot of actions that are happening with people who shouldn't have guns that really should be considered domestic terrorism that's not being called that. Back to the article, sorry. Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis called federal counts of the shooting bullshit and accused the Trump administration of using chaos in the city as an opportunity to occupy Minneapolis in some form. And that's exactly what's going on, right? This is not a real issue that the Trump administration is trying to solve. Deportation, immigration, it's not a real issue that they're trying to get to the root of. Because if it were, then we would be talking about how to reform the immigration system. We would not be deploying federal ICE agents to bother citizens of the country, to bother legal permanent residents of the country. And that's really what's happening. When we look around and we see what's actually happening when it comes to these ICE agents who are out and about doing whatever it is that they are doing, very rarely are we hearing about these agents actually effectively, well, I mean, how could you effectively be doing anything when the mission is bullshit to begin with? So I really don't know. It says at a news conference on Thursday, the governor, Tim Walz, said, excuse me, y'all, I'm kind of recovering from, the holidays. Tim Walz said that, quote, Minnesota must be a part of this investigation, adding that some federal government statements about the shooting had been, quote, verifiably false. State law enforcement officials initially said that they would investigate the killing, but on Thursday they said they could no longer participate because federal agencies had denied them access to evidence. What is there to cover? What is there to hide? If we're dealing with this, a situation that you truly believe is an act of domestic terrorism, why would you be hiding evidence? Why wouldn't you be as transparent as possible with, at the very minimum, local enforcement, right? Local law enforcement, local officials. Why wouldn't you want to be transparent and work with them to unveil what really happened here? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. It says, as protests continued in Minneapolis, Governor Walz activated the state's National Guard out of an abundance of caution, blah, blah, blah. It says, why have federal agents been deployed? The Trump administration began an immigration crackdown in Minnesota last month, deploying scores of federal agents to the state. Federal immigration officers on Tuesday described their presence in Minnesota as the, quote, largest operation to date. The ICE effort in the state is part of a broader deportation push in cities across the country since the start of Trump's second term. Immigration efforts in Minnesota have targeted undocumented immigrants as in other cities, but have focused on the Somali community. The state has roughly 80,000 people of Somali ancestry, but the vast majority of them are American citizens or legal permanent residents. I could go on. Oh, well, let me just finish it up. It says, Mr. Trump and his allies have portrayed the state as a failure of governance by its Democratic leaders, pointing to a fraud scheme that federal prosecutors said has resulted in billions of dollars being pilfered from social service programs. The president has also repeatedly used divisive terms to describe Somalis in Minnesota. It says ICE's Homeland Security investigations are conducting operations, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so long story short, we are just seeing a continuation of what we've seen since the beginning of the Trump administration. Illegal activity, targeting of minority groups and communities, and not doing anything to effectively represent or protect the people of the United States of America. I can't really catch you up on everything that's happened since the last podcast with this administration, but in summary, that is still very much what we're seeing. And I'm not going to end the podcast on, something so negative, but I do want to end it with this. Midterm elections are coming up. I repeat, midterm elections are coming up. If you are waiting every 4 years to vote, that's not enough. We cannot afford to wait another 2 years for people to care about voting. Voting matters, and it matters right now. It matters in your state. It matters in your district. It matters for the future of this country, right? Because the success of the Trump administration, from their perspective, is in a large part dictated by what we do in the midterm elections, right? Whether or not the Democrats can gain some type of power, some type of leverage with these midterm elections is going to make a material difference in what the Trump administration is able to do and accomplish within the next 2 years. And we are seeing in real time what they're looking to do. We saw Project 2025. There is a Project 2026. What more do we need? I understand it can feel overwhelming. Every time we look up, there's a different headline, there's a different situation, there's a different this, there's a different that. And I relate. As tuned in as I am, I still feel overwhelmed. I still feel like, what the hell can I realistically do? But at bare minimum, if you are able, voting, it matters. And that is a hill that I am willing to die on. Do not fall for the BS. Oh, your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count. That is propaganda within itself. Because if your vote didn't matter, if your vote didn't count, then we wouldn't have seen, that's the second time that's happened. Then we would not have seen the past year with all of the redistricting that has been occurring so that minority votes would be watered down. We wouldn't be seeing all of the voting issues and illegalities that have been surrounding voters for all of these years, particularly within the last few elections. All of this is because voting is one of the last resorts that we have to actually vocalize what we want and what we don't want. And if you sit at home because you're too tied up in, you know, the you know, college playoffs and the NFL Super Bowl coming up, or you're too into, you know, whatever the hell else is going on in the world, to realize these elections impact your day-to-day life. And if it's not you today, it will be you tomorrow. Okay? It will. Last year, when I came on the podcast and we were talking about the protests that were happening in California, when we were talking about what ICE was doing in California, and people were like, this is not my fight, this is not my battle, this is not this, and I said then, it is. It is, because when you have an administration that is actively working to dismantle the structure of democracy, if you're not watching the podcast, I have air quotes around democracy. But when you're working with an administration that really doesn't care about the rule of law, the Constitution, none of that, what do you think that's for? It's so that they can come after anybody at any time for any reason. You know, and this story of what happened in Minnesota is a prime example of how the Constitution will be disregarded to move forward very problematic ideals and agendas. But you can vote because midterm elections are coming up. So if you are, you know, not sure about your registration, even if you are registered to vote, this is the perfect time to make sure that, you know, your registration is good to go, that you know where to vote, that you know when to vote, that you are aware of what you need to be voting for, how you need to be voting. All of those things matter. So if you're not going to do anything else, please, please, please take from this episode to make sure that you vote and that you are prepared to do so. I am so happy to be back. I am so excited for what I have in store for this podcast with 2026 being amongst us. And I hope that you stick with me along the way. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.
It's every